Good evening. My name is Corey, the Iconic One. Welcome to Black Leaders with Voices. Today's topic is taking back our community. I have a very special guest today, Pastor Thomas DIXON, and on my right I have my co-partner, Christopher Papa Smurf Casey. Good evening, fellas.
Good evening.
Good evening, Corey. It's a pleasure to be here today. We're at Gullah Cuisine Restaurant, Mount Pleasant, very historical area. We're actually filming on location from the Gullah Cuisine Restaurant, located at 1717 Highway 17 North, Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. This restaurant is more like a convention center type, but more for wedding receptions, corporate meetings, and things like that. There's a full buffet bar set up, and it also has a full bar. We have been blessed with the opportunity to come here, and I actually got a chance to sample some of the food, and it is wonderful. But today we're going to talk about a little bit about taking back our community, and one of the things on why we shot here is because Gullah Cuisine Restaurant has been always famous for giving props to organizations similar to Black Leaders with Voices and getting us to where people can actually hear what we have to say. So we're very thankful to be here today.
Today, to finish off and start our conversation on taking back our community, we're going to sit here and speak to Pastor Thomas DIXON, who is one of the founders of the coalition, and we're going to ask him to address the purpose of the coalition and what can we do to take back our community. Pastor DIXON.
Yes, thank you. First off, thank you for having me here with Black Leaders with Voices, and yourself, Corey, and Papa Smurf, my comrade in arms. The coalition itself came into being in order to combat the problems that we have in our community.
Right.
The problems with lack of unity within our community. We have hoods now instead of neighborhoods.
Sure.
And we saw that there was a need to once again bring that unity back to our community so we could begin to take back our space. It's about power that comes with unity. With unity there's power, with unity there's strength. And if we can get back to the point where we as a community will gather together, rally together, stand together, speak together, if we can get back to that point as we did 50 years ago, then we can begin to do things like take back our community from the crime and the vices going on right now. We can put an end to the violence that's going on right now, because we'll begin to once again love one another instead of doing all this self-hatred that's going on.
True.
Being taken back the community through unity, we're also empowered through the vote in order to take back the community from the politicians that have been elected over the years who are not representing us but their own selfish interests.
Yeah.
We got too many people that's in office right now because we failed to vote in certain elections that are basically doing whatever they want. And they're not representing us when we are up under a government that says that we're to be governed of the people, by the people, and for the people.
Exactly.
We're, as the coalition, we're educating people more and more to start holding those politicians accountable. And if they're not going to do it, they're going to get voted out of office.
They need to be. Well, Pastor, here I have some questions in front of me that the community, as a community, wanted me to address to you. Because you serve the community, you do a good job. We wanted you to address Black Leaders Voices and the people that are listening to your purpose and your drive of what the coalition is going to bring to the community.
Currently, we're sort of caught in a quagmire right now. We've been at this now for 2 years. When we first started out, we were approached by some of the local car clubs, South Carolina Rhinos, which Rez Legree is president, and D. Jones was sitting on Chrome, because they had a problem in the community, first off, in the community as they rode through in their nice cars with law enforcement. And law enforcement was profiling them as drug dealers and things like that. When these brothers and young ladies, they are hard-working people. When they get paid, they don't spend their money to buy jet skis and golf clubs. They spend their money on their vehicles. They get DVDs and video cameras and nice speakers and stuff like that, nice rims. But law enforcement was profiling them, and pulling them over regularly. And they came to us saying, what could they do in order to stop this problem? Well, we listened at that time. It was myself and at that time Elder James Johnson, who was one of the founding partners of the coalition, also who's now with Reverend Al Sharpton's National Action Network.
Okay.
But we listened, and what we heard beyond that point really disturbed us, because they said they weren't just being profiled by the police department when they come into the community, they're being profiled by the children in the community too. Children running up to them as they pull up in their car saying, "What kind of drugs you sell? I have this." And so they asked us, what can we do on both levels?
Yeah.
And that's when we started the initiative, partnering up in law enforcement in order to educate law enforcement from the top down, but also going out into the community in order to educate the community from the bottom up. So ultimately, our goal is to make the two meet in the middle, a mutuality of self-respect for one another, that we'll be able to work together and to live together in order to make our communities better. What do we need to do inside of the communities? We need the communities to get up, and that's the quandary I was talking about, to get the communities on board to stand up for themselves.
Right.
And we're having a lot of difficulty doing that because for some reason or other, our communities are asleep. They're wallowing in their own self-pity, they complain a lot, but they're more interested in the entertainment aspects of life than actually standing up for their own rights, privileges, and responsibilities is going to help them and their children for centuries, for years to come.
True. Right. What is the concept of the coalition? I know you say organization is coalition. Explain it to us and tell me what you mean by it.
Yeah, that's a hard one that most people have. What do you mean by coalition? By definition, a coalition is a group or an amalgamation of different organizations and individuals that come together with one basic mission. Okay. So with the coalition now, we've partnered up with local car clubs, some bike clubs, social organizations, civic organizations, and we don't care about color, race, creed, or whatever. It's all about the mission of trying to bring unity, restore unity into the community, and bring the neighbor back into the neighborhood. And that's across the board. I'm a big follower when it comes to Malcolm X, and he spoke at Oxford University in 1964, and he said, "I, for one, will join with anyone. I don't care what color you are, as long as you want to change this miserable condition that exists on this earth." And I stand firm on those words, and that's one of the founding principles of the coalition. And that's what brings all of the organizations together. All of us have that one mission together. But inside the coalition, everybody can stand individually.
True.
We don't take the identity of South Carolina Rhinos or Sitting on Chrome or Styles of Perfection or any of the or South Carolina Progressive Network. We don't ask them to give up their identity as an organization or any individual to give up their identities. Everybody remains strong in themselves, but united together, we are a much powerful force than any one of us, our individual entities, can ever be.
That's wonderful.
I know that the coalition, one of their main mission and focus is to restore unity. The question I want to ask you personally is, do you think unity still exists in the black community?
Ooh, that's a hard question there. I believe it exists, but I believe that resource hasn't been thoroughly tapped into in the 21st century. I believe that the spirit that was begun 50 years ago, and even before that, even during our slavery times where we were systematically taught disunity, we were systematically brainwashed into not believing in unity. I believe the spirit is still internal because we share a common bond of unity. No matter how much we want to lie to ourselves, we are still an oppressed people within an oppressor nation. And until we decide to draw out that power, until we get those who are willing to stand up and touch that portion in the nature of every African American in particular in America, that until we can get that spark fired up in everybody to draw out that spirit of unity, then we're going to continue to go further and further down. There's going to come a point where we say, that's it.
Yeah.
Right.
That point is coming. We're at that brink right now, I feel, of that breakthrough. There's a lot of people who are understanding that life is more than free drinks before 11. There's a lot who are understanding that there's something wrong with a 4-year-old or 5-year-old who can cuss you out and twerk, but can't say their ABCs
Yeah,
and won't go to school. There's something wrong with a household that, because of the lack of economic opportunities within inner city communities, you have a young male in the household as they're becoming an older male who feels that they have no other alternatives but to sling dope to bring money into their households.
Right.
There's something wrong there, and I believe that it's all turning around right now. It's going full scale because organizations like the Coalition, educational opportunities like the program that we have here, is educating our people to understand what their responsibilities are within the community, and it's also educating the world as to their responsibilities back to our community.
So what do you feel the law enforcement has to do with anything?
Law enforcement has a lot to do with everything. Law enforcement has created a culture of frustration within our community over the years, because there's been certain things that have been allowed to carry on within our community that should never be allowed. You know, if these are servants of the citizenship, we're citizens just like anyone else.
True.
And anytime that you have a disparity in how you treat people, anytime that you have a discriminatory practice against one set of people that's not carrying over to others, there's something wrong, and all it's going to do is breed trouble. And that's what we're having right now in our communities. Only thing is, though, we know that we're outgunned when it comes to law enforcement, because they're legitimate, excuse my expression, thugs. But they have the power base, whereas we have another power base. We can't rebel against them because it's a lose-lose situation in a firefight. But when we turn that situation around and we need to vent our frustrations against this, law enforcement aspect, then we do it internally. We internalize our frustration and we carry out our actions against our own people. And that has got to change. Law enforcement overall, I believe that not all is bad. There are those with good intentions, but the problem has been traditionally that what they've done is they've excluded those of our community from the dialogue table in setting up policy and procedure. Now, how can anybody come into my community and tell me what needs to be done to enforce the law within my community without asking me the questions about what do you think need to be done? Well, for years it's been that way.
Yeah.
We've been excluded, except for those African American men and women who joined the force. They might ask them to contribute. Instead of coming down to the hood and just saying, yo, bro, what's up? How can we fix this problem?
Right.
They've excluded us from the table of discussion. And because of that, the practices that they've tried to put in place have been ineffective. But now, as we've turned the corner, I've seen over the last couple of years, somewhat of a more willingness to work together in order to build this bond and to show the community, okay, law enforcement is now willing to work along so we can begin to break down these struggles. They begin to stop all of the profiling and things like that. Have we gotten there? A long way from that. You know, I'm a brother in the hood too. I might be a pastor, but ain't no sign flashing on my truck saying Pastor DIXON.
Right.
I get pulled over just like anybody else and get treated with disrespect at times like anybody else. But as we continue to work at this problem, as we continue to recruit hire law enforcement officials and get them to understand that there's a problem within their department and they are listening, then we're going to begin to break these problems down so that we can live as equals in this American society. I mean, that's what they say. You know, we all men were created equal. I didn't write that. Some white guy wrote that, you know. And so if he wrote that and they believe that, then we need to show that.
Yeah. With the crime rate being what it is, especially not in the black urban communities, how do you partake now that we're facing a situation where they might pass the weapon law of going to a public restaurant with a concealed weapon? Like, do you think it's gonna make it worse, or do you think it's gonna make it better? Or I mean, like, how do you feel about that?
I read something just recently, and it really sort of touched me because it was really true what they said. What it's going to do is, for one thing, in our black communities, and as we venture out into white America, of course, it's going to create an open season on blacks, right along with the Stand Your Ground law and all of these other laws. It's really going to create an open season on blacks. If anything is said out of the way, there will be a justifiable quote unquote homicide that is the result of it. You got people sitting in restaurants with concealed weapons. We don't know their background, stability, or anything like that. And we already know there's a paranoia of whites against blacks already. If you come into a club, you know, or come into a restaurant, look at the Wild Wings situation just last year, where you had a group of African Americans who got put on hold for over an hour trying to wait on seats and whatever, and then they were asked to leave because a white couple felt threatened. Well, we know that white America, for some reason or other, are threatened by our presence.
That's true.
Now you add a concealed weapon to that,
Takes it a
a whole
whole other
nother level, because that gives that person with that concealed weapon a feeling, be it right or wrong, of power.
Right.
So now you take a threatened person, give them a feeling of power, and they got a weapon on them, there's a big potential for trouble. Now then there's the other aspect of it also is now in the bars, because now you take that scenario and you add alcohol to the situation. But come on, man, come on. It don't take a rocket scientist to figure out what the next step is for brothers.
Well, let me ask you something,
Mhm.
Pastor. And I'm not going to profess that I'm the most learned person in the world. But in order to actually take office, you must have some form of background in community service. Some even favor those who have educational backgrounds, you know, law degrees, different degrees that put them in a position. How can you justify our governor making this stance or even presenting something of that nature, considering that the homicide rate in this country has skyrocketed over the last few years as a result of gun violence? We have a governor that's supporting this. So why should I sit here and listen to you when my governor is telling me I have the right to have a gun?
Yeah, unfortunately, the choice of words is very selective, as saying my governor, and that's only because the governor is the governor of this state, but she's not my governor.
Yes, sir.
Because I didn't elect her, I didn't vote her in office, and I will not vote her in office the next time out. Justification, there is no justification for this. I believe that Nikki Haley, and you can see I'm a name dropper, they call me up or whatever. I'll give them my number straight up, you know, straight up. I'm right there whenever anybody want to talk about it. But Nikki Haley, basically, I really do believe that her financial interests and her own self-interest are dictating where she's headed to in every decision that she makes. There are gun lobbyists. There are people who support her. Who I couldn't prove it, but there's probably some financial rewards in there for her. Like I said, I could not prove that. It's my personal opinion.
Yes, sir.
But to take a logical mind, and hopefully we elect people with logical minds. So somebody elected her thinking she had a logical mind. To make a decision to sign a bill with no questions asked that allows concealed weapons in bars, something is wrong there. Something is that mind is not logical. And whoever put her in there, whoever voted for her, now whatever blood is shed as a result of that, that blood is on them also.
Yes, sir.
Okay. As far as her motivation, there has to be something behind it. I know she's funded by the Tea Party. She's a Tea Party person. Her logic is not necessarily pro our community. So there's not really any reason to even think that she's doing anything inside of our community. And while I'm on her right now, I just want to make sure I make it perfectly clear that her supposed change in position on education, because for the last 3 years she's been actually stealing or taking, not stealing, but taking money from education in inner city schools, okay? She's been decreasing programs and financing to the inner city schools. But now all of a sudden, as of January 1st, 2014, she supposedly changed her perspective and wants to spend all of this money in the corridor of shame and in inner city schools throughout the state of South Carolina.
Wow.
Don't be deceived. Do not be fooled. Do not be bamboozled by her rhetoric and her foolishness. The only reason why she's made those statements is because this is an election year, and she's running for re-election in November. I guarantee you, if you fall for that yakidot, we're going to have a lunatic back in charge come November 5th of this year, who is not going to do anything once again. No matter what she said January 1st, once she gets reelected, that's not going to happen.
Right.
If she's going to do it, she can do it right now. She hasn't done it for 3 years. She made a promise January 1st. It's the middle of February now. We ain't heard nothing else from it. So if she's using that as a campaign strategy, I'm here to let anybody know. Don't fall for it.
Right.
Don't fall for it. She ain't in our corner. She ain't in our corner. I was up in D.C. in right after the first election, 2008. Right after, while President Obama was in his first term, I was there for the first Tea Party rally that they had there. Just happened to be visiting my sister up there. Wound up in the middle of the Capitol with all of the Tea Partiers in the world, with signs that depicted our president as with the Joker face and the "Don't tread on me" signs and all of this all kind of just racist stuff. Seriously racist stuff there, you know. And so that's her party. That's who she supports. So we have no reason to believe that she's in our corner about anything, really.
Are you in the coalition involved in any other organizations? And if you are, like, what do they do, to help and assist what the coalition brings to the table?
Yes, we are. We partnered up, just like I said, with Malcolm X's quote. You know, I don't care what color you are. You know, as long as you want to change this miserable condition that exists on this earth. So we partnered up with one of our primary partners is South Carolina Progressive Network, which would traditionally folks would want to probably say, okay, it's a white organization.
Right.
Only because there's not more active participation from other brothers and sisters. That's the only reason why. But their goal is just like ours. It's about injustice, it's about battling injustice. And they are standing against injustice on a whole lot of different fronts. And they're not only the South Carolina Progressive Network, it's a national network. And so we've partnered up with them. They support us, we support them. We attended their rallies and their protests. They're actually involved in other areas such as worker rights, trying to get the minimum wage increased and things of that sort. So the coalition's right there with them. The coalition's right there with them. Right now, we might be the only or one of the few, especially in South Carolina, black organizations that have stood up and said, we'll partner with anybody. Y'all ready to march? We'll march with you. If it's a right cause, if it's a just cause, if it's a legal cause, we'll stand there right with them.
Wonderful.
They go to jail, we going to jail too.
There you go.
What a lot of our leaders in the past from the segregation area, a lot of our leaders come from the church. What does the church has to do to help us to take back our community, to have more things, to get our community back on a positive note? Like, what can the church do to help?
Excuse me for smiling, but I always have that reaction when I hear about the church and doing to take back our community. You see, and I know I'm probably going to step on some toes as I say this, but you know that's how I roll.
This is what it shows, Black Leaders with Voices.
Thank God for Black Leaders with Voices. But traditionally, okay, the civil rights movement 50 years ago, we made strides, we made definitely achievements. And we did it because the church unified itself and stood with the leaders then. They got behind the cause. They did not get away from the cause. But not long after that, something happened inside of the church, and the church, instead of the church being a part of the community, the church went inside the four walls, and they stayed inside of the four walls. The only thing that they did after the initial civil rights movement and the successes was to go and start saving each other. Instead of staying in the community and impacting the community the way that they should be. The pastors got selfish, they got greedy, they started bringing everything in, and there was no outreach outside of the church. The condition of our... No outreach outside of the church. Instead of them taking the advances, the strides that we did make, getting out in the community and continue to minister inside of the communities what they preach and what they teach, they just went inside those four walls and stayed inside those four walls. And subsequently, even though they get tax breaks for being able to impact the communities and things of that sort, the communities around them have basically crumbled. You take our community, and most of our communities, there's a church on every block. But when you look around the block, there's dilapidated building, there's crack everywhere, there's drunks everywhere, there's prostitution, there's teenage pregnancy, everything is there, but the church is in there on Sunday You know,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
glory, glory. Instead of getting out there, a lot of them same people in the church, when they go home, they getting that under the table drug money from that young man in their household that's going out swinging, and they ain't saying nothing to them. But they go back into the church and they go to the front and off right again. The church has been extremely ineffective. Not all, but a lot have been extremely ineffective at stopping the downhill spiral in our community over the last 50 years that has occurred. That's one of the reasons why the coalition doesn't necessarily go out of our way to court church people, pastors and things like that. We do what we do, expecting that those of the religious community, if the Spirit of God really does dwell in their hearts, that Spirit should motivate them to get out and get involved with what we're doing. We should never have to go to a pastor and say, hey, we're doing this, that, and the other over here. Would you come out with us? It should be, we heard what the coalition is doing. Let's go get with it. That's real church. That's real Bible, and that's real community right there. That's restoring unity.
Let me ask you a question, Pastor. I'm so glad you brought that up. A lot of what we take in is based on what we see. That's all the way from a child. You say a lot of the first 5 years of the child's life really determines how he's going to be, because he's very, he's being influenced by everything he sees and everything that goes on. Most parents, especially here in South Carolina, because it's a very spiritual, religious state, normally takes their children to church. If they go, they carry the child with. If the church is situated to where they're offering some kind of understanding about life for, the years to come, why is there so much division? Why do you have these different denominations that refuse to come together but still offer some insight to our children on the way you live? Isn't that kind of like a contradiction of what religion should stand for?
Yeah, and that's the difference between religion and a relationship with God. A relationship with God dictates that we are our brother's keeper.
Yes, sir.
Bottom line.
Yes, sir.
Anything aside from that is religion. Religion says what I do adds up to my salvation. I go to church, I pay my tithes, I sing on the choir, I clap my hands,
sir. Yes,
I
sir.
fall out.
Yes, sir.
But a relationship dictates that after I get up off my knees, I need to go out here and help somebody.
Right.
I need to be the go-between in whatever field I have, whatever gifting I have. I need to go and serve others with that gifting. And instead of doing that, what we're having in the church community is a lot of people that are basically just sitting around saving each other.
Yes, sir. Yes,
And
sir.
now you take your children into that environment, and especially when what you hear in church doesn't translate into what you see at home. You take a child that's in church, they see this one individual, but then they know that individual at home, and they've heard the message now. They've been to Sunday school, they heard the message.
Right.
They're trying to figure in their minds, man, what's going on here?
Yes, sir.
Is my parent schizophrenic or what? They say one thing in church, they're confused. And so then when we wonder as they get older and they start straying away from the church, well, the main reason is because the church is full of a bunch of hypocrites.
Right.
And have shown them literally and figuratively that hypocrisy in religion is acceptable, which it actually is not acceptable in any kind of way. It's one line and one line only.
Right. Okay. And I totally respect that. I don't think I have the right, the moral right to speak in that field, because I'm not that associated with it. But you're a pastor, so you know what's going on. You've taken a lot of your time, a lot of years to study and better understand the situation, so you know what's going on. So you're saying that there is a problem.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's not the only place where there's a problem at. We have a problem with our national organizations that represent black people, African Americans. Here in the Low Country, as we've been doing this now as the coalition for 2 years, we have had very little participation from our national black organization, the NAACP, in what we do. They know we're there, they know what we're doing, but unless there's certain mechanisms in place, such as cameras and things like that, we don't really see or hear from them.
Sir.
Why aren't they in the community doing what they're professed to do for the advancement of colored people?
Exactly.
They done dropped the advancement aspect of it. They just the National Association for Colored People right now.
Right.
And right now the coalition is for the advancement of colored people. I don't understand that. You know, when we have our affairs and functions, the Greek community, we don't hear from the Greek community.
Right.
But except that you don't want to have a step show, let's get out there and do our thing.
Yes,
you
sir.
know,
Yes, sir.
when really we need the Greek community out in the community.
Yes, sir. Yeah, you're
you
right.
know, we need them outstanding as role models, educators, whatever capacity they're in. We need them out there with us, not just being Greeks or stepping. You know, we need some viable men and women out here in the community as examples to our younger ones of where they
Yes,
can
sir.
go
Yes, sir.
and how they can get there, instead of sitting back saying, "Oh, the coalition doing something today," but you know, we got club tonight.
Right.
Well, Pastor, sorry we ran out of time, but we can sit here and talk all day.
man.
between you and public service. And a lot of questions I didn't get a chance to get to you,
Mhm.
you know, from the community, from Black leaders and voices. We thank you for coming anyway and sharing your knowledge on the community and how
Yes.
we can help, you know, with the community.
Well, I really appreciate it.
I would like for you to leave, if you can tell the people that's watching, how can they get in contact with you and check out what you and the coalition doing.
Well, this is Pastor Dixon here, Pastor Thomas Dixon, and if you ever got any kind of issues or whatever, you can hit me up on my cell. That number is area code 843-437-1949. That's Pastor Thomas Dixon, 843-437-1949. You can hit me up on email at tad3189@gmail.com, or you can holler at your boy on Facebook. Okay, drop the pastor, just Thomas Dixon, DIXON. Hit me up on Facebook, send me a friend request. If you got some issues or whatever, inbox me. I ain't getting ready to turn my back on you because you my people. That's all I can say.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm Corey, the Iconic One. This is Papa Smurf. This is Pastor Thomas Dixon, and we're Black Movement Voices.